I know the cover art was George Whiting, and I know I talked with him about that.
Yeah, that's when the graphic department used to work really closely with Dominion Review too.
Yep.
Well, I am super excited to be here this Thursday. This is, I think, the first one ever since I've moved. Because I think I did one from my dad's, but this is my first one at at my home. Which, by the way, the address is 12345. Isn't that freaking awesome?
Yes.
Hi, everybody. I'm Malika Albrecht, and I am the founding editor of Redheaded Stepchild. We are actually open for submissions, so, poets that might have had a rejection, send it our way. We would love to have your work. That would be amazing, and we will be open for subs until the end of February. Tonight, I'm super excited and have been having a wonderful time with Flashback City with some old friends that went to Old Dominion with me. Laura Lee Washburn, who is our featured poet tonight, our gracious poet that we get to celebrate with, was the first person editor. Yeah, and your new book, we can definitely need to highlight that. Was the editor of Dominion Review and published my first ever poems as an adult. And so I owe her a deep debt of gratitude. And then also she was someone who inspired me as a writer, who I did think was cool, even though Laura was saying nobody thought that. And actually, there's 3 people that have said, no, we owe a lot to you. And I think one of the things I like celebrating is not just amazing poets, but people who I am inspired by the way they create poetry community. I think that one of the most beautiful things about being a poet is being in the company of you all and knowing that I am in good hands and with good-hearted humans, which to me is everything. I'm going to give you a quick bio and then I'm going to turn it over to Laura. Laura Lee Washburn is a university professor, the director of creative writing at Pittsburg State University in Kansas, the author of the Book of Stolen Images, which came out with Meadowlark, which was also awarded the Nelson Book Award from the Kansas Authors Club. This Good Warm Place, 10th Anniversary Expanded Edition, which was published by March Street, and Watching the Contortionists, love that name, Palanquin Chapbook Prize. And she is the editor-in-chief of Poetry Cooperative, Heartland, Poetry of Love, Resistance, and Solidarity. Her newest, wow, this is an old one. The newest, but the book at this point, the other book she has is Arteries, and this is Harbor Review's Washburn Prize is in her honor. This is Arteries, and I love the cover, and I did want to ask you a little bit about that, Laura. I'm going to spotlight you so it can be a little bit bigger for everybody. There we go. Look at that. Can you talk about, besides like the beautiful imagery of it, how you chose the cover or how the cover got chosen?
Yes. For both my recent books, the publishers would have done covers, but I wanted to pick my own art. So the Book of Stolen Images, that's Tino Rodriguez. You can find his paintings online and buy mugs and t-shirts although don't buy the t-shirts because they're the wrong sizes. But anyway, with his stuff on them. And then for this one, my friend Allison, who's here tonight, Allison Blevins, who has a Small Harbor press, works with a lot of artists, and she recommended someone to me, Diana Baltag. And I told Diana, I looked at what Diana had done. I said, oh, I like this one you did. Can you just change it a little bit for me? And she said, no, I'll make you a new one. What do you like about it? So the Daisy, my great-grandmother's name was Daisy, and this book does have a lot of family stories and nostalgia in it. And the title is Arteries. And although that looks like roots, it's actually the left and right ventricle. And there's buttons, thimble, some embroidery over here. So a lot of what's on the cover is touched on in the book. And the artist, again, is Diana Baltag. She now works with Small Harbor, and she's amazing.
Thank you. I knew it had a lot of symbology in there, and I didn't want it not to get mentioned, like how it got chosen, but I didn't know that backstory, and that was amazing. Well, I am so happy to welcome you here tonight, and I'm going to turn it over to you for a reading. And I do want to also mention again about the community building. The minute I said something to Laura about could we feature Arteries and her for one Thursday, she said yes. Also want to recommend, and then she recommended some people, and then she said, also, I would like to, yeah, Brave in the Body. That's an awesome anthology. I also wanted, she also said, can I have a surprise guest poet? So tonight you also have a surprise waiting in the wings, and we will let that be there. Thank you for being here, Laura.
Thanks so much for having me. This is awesome. Since Book of Stolen Images is fairly recent, I did a lot of readings for that, and I haven't really done readings for Arteries. So this is truly a book launch. And so I'm excited to have old friends here and new friends. And I thought I'm supposed to read for about 20 minutes. So I thought I'd talk a little bit about how the book is organized. It's in 4 sections. The title of the book is Arteries, and there's some play on the idea of branches in a family tree. But there's also this idea that of a lot of food in the book, and some of it I'm from the South, so artery clogging. Um, so the titles of the sections are Chow Chow, Blue Crab,
Mm.
Beans and Bacon, and Fig Jam. This is a book that I worked on when I was young. I started when I was young. There are poems here that I wrote in the 90s. And then I set a lot of it aside for a long time. And then I got some ideas later of how to bring it back to life and wrote some new things. And then I thought I would not find a publisher. And because I don't know why, I thought this was very different from my other book. So I did find one, and you can buy this book on Amazon. I don't still find it on the website for the publisher. So in any case, so there is some nostalgia here. There is a lot of place. And I'll read the first poem in the book from the section called Chow Chow. And it's an elegy for a certain part of childhood. And I guess I'm going to mention some of the characters in the book, and one of them is named Lena. And this poem doesn't mention her, but it kind of takes place in her yard. I mean, I'm just saying that because that'll come back in another poem I'm going to read. Then, I am sorry for climbing the gray branches of the bent fig, and for slamming the screen door with the spring too heavy for my hands on my way in or out to the green slatted bench, its white cement sides stamped into the earth, where we sat with our grape or orange sodas in white spiraled wire planted into the ground, where you pulled a few weeds or patted dirt around seedlings while we watched my father climb up with spiked shoes and a rope to saw limbs that needed pruned, or waited for the boys to finish tilling a new patch for the garden of tomatoes and string beans tied to post, radishes and peppers, 3 or 4 kinds, where bees circle camellias whose scent is so wild that I am sneezing even now, and my eyes water because I am so sorry. I will cry thinking about bringing salt out to the hot cherry tomatoes we pulled straight off the vine, and also of the dark ivy that grew up to the first branches around the front yard's crabapple that ultimately failed, and that now, like all the rest, is good and gone. So the next one is more a poem of place. It's the park in Virginia Beach called the First Landing State Park. That's where the poem begins. And the title is Ducks. And I am talking about those amphibious machines. And I remember the last time I was on a trail in the park that there were mosquitoes everywhere, and I could hear people, tourists on ducks, and somebody with a megaphone. So it wasn't as idyllic as it had been in my childhood. But it's kind of a listing poem of the place. And then at the end, there's a 3-dot break, and then it shifts, and right after that are the words, and so it goes. And the world, the larger world, and some complexity enters the poem. Ducks. High dune sea forest, bald cypress swamp, flat packed dirt path, sand road, seashore state park, salt marsh, cypress stumps, shaded leaf sky, pirate booty, old swamp, fresh black water, leaf tannins, milk snakes, herons, frogs, egrets, osprey, red-eared turtles, gray Spanish moss. At the Narrows, I found minnows for the bucket, green sea algae, boat ramp, smell of old home, water lapping, marsh crabs. And so it goes. First Landing State Park, new name, amphibious vehicle, bullhorn, loud tours, mosquitoes stirred, half a continent away, Branson tourist families die trapped in these old war machines. So I live in Pittsburg, Kansas, and it's about 4 hours from Springfield, Missouri, and that's a little ways from Branson, and that was something that happened in Branson. The next poem is from this section called Blue Crab, and it's a short lyric. It's also about place and history, and it has some of the same images as the last poem. And that Lena is mentioned right again at the end. New moon, bald cypress trail, where leaf break and pine blew the ground, needles and cones lift fragrance in congress with the soft acidic rot of root and vine. Morning doves croon away and away, night jars fall to their black feasts. Cypress knees eternally stretch or bend in water so black it drinks clean. The pirates are long ago gone. Their treasure chests, if ever they were, sink deeper toward the center. Sink deeper toward the core of never been. And Lena's little song of croak and lift and the old moon falling again. Let's move on to beans and bacon. So, I mentioned that my great grandmother's name was Daisy. There's a character named Lena. There's nobody in my family actually named Lena. I can't say how much of this is true and how much is made up, because obviously I made up things. And but if you think about somebody saying to you, you'll never live that down. Those stories that circulate through families and those tales or pieces of gossip, that's what this book is built on. So what happens is the book jumps around in time quite a lot, and it circles back around certain images and different people in this family tree. So this next one, Ritual, is a new character. I'll just call her Granny. And the this one goes to the title of the book. There's an epigraph from Aesop. Better beans and bacon in peace than cakes and ale in fear. The poem is Ritual. Butter beans. Don't ask, just eat. Don't tell. If Granny slice fat back thick as your wrist into the pot. Here, I eat 1 plate, 2 plate, dessert plate, whatever served as side dish. Let it all work in me as it will. Raw cabbage rooting through the fat macaroni, cheddar unmelting itself, vinegar bracing greens, cornbread crust crisp as tortilla, Granny's cornbread, always her cornbread. We've seen the health class film, the shocking, lard-full demonstrations, a pound of pure fat, unappealing, dished into a bucket, stuffed into tubes. White globs and blobs may as well be the arm of your mother. A late embalming trend can show you the artery that closed a life, the relentless war Wednesday dinner makes against an organ. This is family. Granny calling her children and their theirs to dinner 1 night in every week. Butter beans, meatloaf, green beans, coleslaw, flank steak, macaroni and cheese, cornbread, cobbler, pie, cream. And what can we do but eat? Embrace the fats, the love, the cakes, the grace. I'm gonna jump over to section 4, Fig Jam. I see food in here again. I don't know when I decided to read these, how I picked. But I feel like this one also has the idea of elegy in it. And so it's circling back to that nostalgia from the beginning of the book. Failure. Today's ghost is a fern in light wind. When I was a child, I read books. Told to clean my room, I sat at the case and rearranged, happy. Good bacon, cornbread and chicken, a distaste for turkey. The buttons I called teddy bear eyes and wanted, I admit, I could go on all day. Let's say I still know the size of someone's nose or the particular color of the makeup that clogged her pores, even the flat-soled shoes. I will never recover enough. Resurrection and resurrections, want and need. I see how religion developed to fend off grief, making an offer no one would refuse, this perfect story, this only thing worth wanting. I have no concept of time. Where am I?
I want you to keep going. We're doing great.
But how many minutes have I read? Anybody?
I have not, I would say definitely 6, 7, 8. I'm terrible at time too. And I have to tell you, I am so caught up in your work. I have so many questions. It's the language. Oh my God. I think your work must be so much fun to read aloud. So the words would just taste good in your mouth just because they're about food. It's just good
Sometimes
use of language.
those lists are so delightful for me to say and read when I'm not trying to say too many S's at once. But I fear like that listeners just that lists aren't good to listen to. They're good to read and imagine. I don't
I
know.
would say the pleasure is felt, it's palpable as you read it, but I think all the poets out here would agree. And just a lovely brilliance with the language. I just love it. We're gonna have fun talking, but keep reading.
Okay, that's so nice. Well, I was deciding if I should read like one or two more. So it sounds like two or three.
Yes,
Okay.
that's
All right. Okay, so this one is titled Bruisewort. Wort means plant, as you probably know, and the bruisewort is a name for a daisy. It has medicinal value. So this poem has a lot of plant words. It is an homage to my great grandmother sometimes, and sometimes it's just about daisies. It just shifts back and forth. Bruisewort. The petals are trying to break away from each other. They don't want one-dimensional symmetry. I feel like I should hold the book like this while I read. The daisy is multi-layered. One gets the feeling that whirled enough in time, the daisy could become a chrysanthemum, florets building above florets. But the daisy restrains itself for the bee's sake and leaves a golden disk of small, round, golden balls to dance and feed upon. Daisy is the honey of my tea, and daisy is the sweet, hot summer when my great-grandmother's black cane tipped down the street. We were perfectly matched, me in the white booties just learning to run. Someday, I might be lucky enough to become Daisy, to become the center and hope of the day. The flower is not a woman, though the woman be a flower. The flower is not a politician calling for endless reproduction. Oh, the flower is every bit for violation and endless reproduction. Capitula and brocked, spoon-shaped leaves, composite of yellow flowers and individual flowers, of petals, everlasting pretty, healer of bruises. The juice of the daisy heals your wounds, balm, wart, plant, root. So this next one, Willful, it is the same granny that made all the food. And it goes back to a time when she was young. And then it goes all the way into the future. I think that's what this poem does. Okay. Willful. She put the wheels on her feet because she was the oldest child, and Mama just didn't have time to know. People live their lives. One day you're canning pork sausage and it's fat and wrapping your brother's feet in newspaper for school. One day you're sneaking radishes under the bed. Mama's the kind of woman that dips snuff. More than once she's thrown the poke in the wood stove, burned up cash change. Daddy's a spoil his women rascal. That's how she lived. She put the wheels on her feet and rolled out to the window where that man served. And for the rest of his life, Eldon Gray, he was hers. Some days she was like a dog on a too short leash, whining its way into the house. Some days she was the Greyhound bus dancing for her 8 home movie in the Florida, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Virginia, West Virginia, Appomattox, North Carolina, anywhere you want sun. The story never ends. Daughters and in-laws, the old aunt rotting in her grave, her cellar goods ripe with botulism on the shelves, factories and oceans, school children home alone. We think the golden couch under the window, the whole damn thing sometimes, again and again, because she put the wheels on her feet, because the man worked in the window, and she made him? No. The only cause is one cause, or the light of it all. And I'll stop there if that's okay. And
Perfect.
I did want to say, okay, so that's Arteries. You can get that on Amazon. The Book of Stolen Images you can get directly from Meadowlark Press online or elsewhere. And I am not in Braving the Body anthology, but it's published by Small Harbor Press, and I am loosely affiliated with that, and I think it's a great book. I do recommend it.
Thank you. And yes, Braving the Body, a lot of really dear friends are in that anthology, and very grateful to Harbor for publishing it. And I think you have somebody you wanted to surprise us with.
I have a surprise guest. The founder of Harbor Editions, the founder of Harbor Review, the author of God knows how many books of poetry. She probably gets tired of hearing me say that, but I really can't keep up. My friend and former student and hero, Allison Blevins, whose most recent book is Where Will We Live When the House Burns Down, from Percy Books, the winner of the Lexi Radinsky Prize. And I did all of that from memory, Allison.
Impressive. Yay.
Oh, well, thank you, Laura. And thank you everyone for coming to hear Laura, because she is my personal hero, and just an incredible writer. And I always say the woman who taught me all the things, especially the writing things. So I'm grateful to be your special guest. I'm just gonna read a couple of pieces from my book, Where Will We Live If the House Burns Down? And it came out in November. It's an odd little hybrid thing that has characters and a increasingly unhinged narrator, and I am both the narrator and one of the characters. So it deals a lot with surrealist art, as you can tell by the cover, female surrealists, and is playing with, surrealism in the text. I'm just gonna jump around and read some that I like, no order. As a child, Grim waited alone inside the car once a week while the mother shopped for groceries. She wrote screenplay treatments in her head about young girls abandoned by their mothers in cars outside small Kansas grocery stores. One movie girl spends most of the movie researching how to pay a mortgage absent a grown-up. From a car window, a child might mistake the glint of sun off car roofs as waves and crests. This is how Grimm learned the magic of motion, like how, as a child, your feet and thighs still roll in figure eights as you lace your sneakers and walk to the car after roller skating. At bedtime, the youngest finally puckers her baby fat lips, pulls up half of Grandma Verla's old quilt in the corner of a pink plush blanket bought new, and rolls onto her right side. She settles into the mattress like I've seen dogs do. She will be asleep by the time Grem reaches her bedroom. This is the routine that lasts hours. Milk, water, snacks, diapers, books, band-aids, more books. This is the joy I tried to explain to an old friend as we wrote together one weekend, ensconced. Mostly, the friend and I listened to each other and agreed, "You're so right." The game women need to play with each other to feel alive. Grim feels this joy in her hips. Joy radiates down her left leg from her sacrum to the top of her foot. Joy thickens in the long muscles in the backs of her legs, wraps itself like a glove might, each finger around her chest, and hugs and hugs and hugs. Joy settles on her like dirt on pavement after a pelting rain. Some nights, Grim folds her body over the body of the sleeping son in his bed like origami. Thinks of all the mothers who have made their bodies into this shape as bombs drop, guns click their self-righteous click before bang. Men go about their violence. And this is the last one. Now it is July outside. Grim feels sorry for herself in a chair watching the impending dark. It smells like July and freshly cut grass. The house windows, small squares like teeth. Grim wants someone who loves her to say, "Enough now, too much." But for the body in pain, every moment is an accounting of pain. Thank you.
Holy smoke. I want to let everybody know we will be celebrating with Allison in a few weeks. I think, yes, I know, right? You got just enough taste to really want to be in this. I'm going to bring all of us together with the gallery, but thank you so much, Allison, for doing that. And, thank you, Laura, for coming up with the idea. I have a lot of questions because yeah, I think everybody just said, holy smokes. Yep. Laura, like we were saying, the language of your work just thrills me. And you were asking about the list and how it is for a reader. I knew it'd be fun as the person, saying it because it just would taste good in your mouth. But for us on the other side as listeners, yes. It's fabulous. You don't need to worry that somehow it's glazing over because the thrill in the language is really amazing. And I want to say there's something that I see that connects y'all's work in to me. Allison, the work there's something about the physical sensations or the way you embody images that I find fascinating and unique. I also find fascinating and unique the way that Laura really thrills in the sonic, architecture of her poems. And so what I would say there is there's both such a deep attentiveness to experience, whether it's an experience in your body or a part of your body, like your ears or how words feel in the body that connects you to. And I just found that interesting. I don't think I would have thought that had I not had y'all read in the same space. So thank you. It kind of worked for
Allison,
me. And
how many
Yeah.
years were we in writing group together?
At
And
least,
how often did we meet?
at least 10 years, right? That
Or
feels
like every 2 weeks?
yeah.
wow.
Yeah. We may
So,
have rubbed off on each other a little bit.
yeah.
You
I think when someone's your teacher for so long, that it feels like you have to like take on all of their qualities. That at least that's how I learned, is that like I would try to do all the things that she was doing. So you try it on and figure out what fits for you. And I think yeah, you kind of become all the people you've ever learned from.
Oh, I love that. I like that idea. Did other people have specific questions besides are just all y'all are gonna have fun reading the chat section, by the way. You are.
I skimmed it while Allison was starting to read, since I've heard a lot of her poems before. Um,
You
But
haven't,
yeah, it is fun reading the chat section. And I wondered, Josie, since you've spent more time at some of the places I wrote about than anybody else, if you thought I got them.
I was thinking that as I was listening to it. I was listening to your list of things, and I said, "I've seen that." Yes, you did a good job capturing them.
Okay.
Yeah, I would definitely say, and the food, there was something that you said, Shamala, that I really wanted to come back to. And I'm hoping that you'll remember exactly what I'm talking about. It was something about the rituals of eating together. Can you unmute? Do you know what I'm talking about,
You're talking
Shamala?
about something I put in the chat or
Yes, it's something that you
Uh,
phrased that was so well done.
I'm scrolling up. Something I think it was a litany of food and food and family and loves. I don't know. It was a litany. It's not, oh yeah, this is a food and
Yeah.
family litany of devotion.
Yes. Yeah, I love the litany of devotion. And there is something in that. There somebody else dovetailed with that. And that last that and what can we do but eat and embrace the fat, the love, the cakes, the grace. God, that's gorgeous. And it did feel like a prayer, to
That makes
me.
sense. I once proposed an AWP panel that did not get accepted. That was sort of like poetry about food is the new prayer. You remember all those poems about blackberries people were writing and cheese, like in the 80s and 90s? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think it is, I mean, that's prayer to me.
Let's try
Also,
that for AWP 2026.
Go for it. Try it.
the redux, the redo. Well, if nobody has any questions, are there any thoughts that you wanted to share?
I guess I
Nope.
do have a question, which is about the experience of coming back to poems that you wrote a long time ago and then writing new poems. And did you feel like you had to kind of like change your style, or did you feel like there was some sort of continuity, or was that a struggle? I was just curious.
Writing the new ones wasn't hard. I had to have a long break from them to realize that I could, that I had things I hadn't said yet. So without looking at them for a while, I was able to revisit some of the same themes in new ways in my new voice and the way I write now. And for a long time, I really wanted those early poems to be published, and then I gave up on them. And now sometimes I hate them. Just, you know how you are, like with your older work. So I have to like let them sort of exist as what they are. But there are things in here that I don't usually, when I'm choosing poems for the reading, I feel some things feel a little immature to me. Maybe not style, but what I'm writing about. But I mean, they're about a younger person, so it makes sense. So that's something that I'm still having some issues with mentally. But writing the new ones, that was just fun. That was that, and all of the sudden I could just see some gaps and some things that weren't there. So that part was fun. But also having lived with all of them this long, sometimes when I look at this book, like if I'm getting ready for reading, I want to keep revising it and changing it. So that's not a good idea. I don't feel that way about this book. I it's different. So anyway, but I never tried very hard to publish. Like that's a whole job part of this that I spent some time on at parts of my life. I worked really hard at it. But I was a teacher for a long time, and I had that writing group that met every 2 weeks of my husband, Roland Sadowski, and Allison, and Melissa Fite Johnson, Eric Dutton, and Chris Anderson. And anyway, then I was just like, I will write a poem every 2 weeks. I will write a new poem every 2 weeks. But getting things out there to be published was never something I have done like I'm should have done. So that means I always have a lot of old poems that I can publish. That's where I was getting with that. Yeah.
I like that question. And it's interesting also our relationship, or the relationship you're talking about, like with old poems and newer poems. And I do kind of think there was something made me think about how Christy and I will sometimes joke, oh, it has that new poem smell. There's kind of a thing that happens. It's like a baby. We're like, it smells good, even if it's, really not the prettiest baby. It's that new poem smell. And I think that it was fascinating to hear you talk about like that complex relationship we have with our word. Yeah. I relate to it too. There's times that I'll read something and I'll think, oh, I should change that word. Or I should do this differently. It's fascinating. So thanks for asking that question. Yeah, I do love that new poem smell too. They should make it in an air freshener. Yeah, but it's not this, it's really that feeling of new love, of co-creating with whatever it is, however you view your creative process, that journey. It's a trip. But I really loved having y'all together. That was awesome. That was fascinating. And 10 years of meeting every 2 weeks blows my mind. I'm sorry. I don't think there's anything I mean, that's impressive.
I'm sure we
Yeah.
skip sometimes. We were pretty good about it.
Yeah, and we did online during COVID, and yeah.
Yeah. And then we stopped, and then I stopped writing.
Oh,
Brief break. It's the gathering period, as
Well,
somebody used to always tell me.
I did the books things. I put stuff together, so that's a phase.
And I would say that's part of the creative process too. That's a different relationship with the work. By the way, if people are looking where to get the books, it's in the chat section. So just click those links. And that way, I did also want to ask if somebody wanted a signed copy, Allison or Laura, could they reach out directly to you guys to get a signed copy of one of the books or any of the books?
I think that neither one of us has bandwidth for that right now. Is that true,
Okay.
Allison?
Yeah.
Although I do have a box in my car all the time. So if you see me, absolutely. But if I have to put it in the mail, it's not going to happen right now.
Totally get that. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, normally
that's awesome.
yes, but not for a little while.
No worries. That's if I love if you see me it makes me think of selling t-shirts out of the back of my car.
Right.
Okay. Well, I feel like we can move towards open mic, and I do have a list. If somebody has changed their mind, let me know. I am going to pause the recording because we do that when somebody was. Sorry about that, guys. You know what? That's fine. That'll be between us. It's too good. Shabala.
It's so good to have friends with a sense of humor. Gary's in one way and Karen's uniquely in Karen's way, and we can't do without them. This is called Between Zen and Now, and it's fairly wet ink too, from the weekend after the inauguration, but I don't think it's dark. East Asian monk at the side of suburban Norcal Street on a cold January day, saffron robe barely visible under long brown cloth coat that might have walked past Sherlock Holmes in 19th century London. This one is walking too, east to west and back again, or anyway up and down the pavement, cell phone glued to ear, gluing future to heritage. So far from Zen, I laugh, and then I see his broken down car. And this is the time of broken. I'm broken too, and just as in between. Centuries, continents, feelings. Axis and fulcrum of history, this moment. And so he paces. And will there be a tow truck soon? As I drive to the best takeout dim sum in the South Bay 4 days before Chinese New Year 2025, and about as many days after the 20th of January, which, well, Martin Luther King, that's good, but also something else. And do we spin dizzyingly back in centuries, or does the wave break somewhere and leave us on a further, better shore? That monk, or his ancestors, and my 19-year-old self who got in a jumbo jet and flew 15,000 miles, thought a further shore worth washing up on. But then, shores, foreshores, waves, coastal erosion, the space to stand on is getting so narrow. Changing times, tsunamis, who knows? A man as tanned and wrinkled as a sea urchin told me once, on a narrow ledge a little few feet above a fossil-strewn Pacific beach, that he was an intertidal vertebrate, as are we all now, watching centuries spin, waiting for the tide to make up its mind, perhaps carrying a little water to share, perhaps a bucket and bailing as fast as we can.
Wow. Holy smokes, powerful. Yeah, the space to stand on is getting so narrow. I love also that and waiting for the tide to make up its mind. Thank you. Wait, I love that people are sharing really refreshing too. Allie, I have you next.
Okay, so I had to change what I was going to share because if everybody else is going to share a fresher poem, I am not going to not follow suit. So I'm pretty sure Sean will have heard this because I think this was the same prompt that we had. Yeah. Oh, and I just wanted to say to Laura again, wow, those poems were so beautiful. And like the food and just like the depth of description you brought to everything, because I feel like sometimes description can be very broad and flat, but like this was so deep, like it was so into the like foundations of the thing that you were talking about. And it was really lovely. Anyway, this is Waiting for the Ragged Portal. The rose petals go slack-jawed when it appears. Hasty here, since I don't want to be rejected after some world's careful consideration. I press my hand to the mirror, palm to palm in a gelatinous kiss. I'm waiting for some bandit to appear, wrapped like when you sneak ice cream in your own kitchen, like a deer with a salt lick, like a kid with, well, anything. The twig snaps, but it turns out to be the sound of my heart, and everyone can hear it. I'm afraid they won't let me in if I can't calm down, like how my pulse races as soon as the blood pressure cuff goes on, the same way a temperature check makes me nervous, or a peek in my bag leaves me wondering what dangerous substance I've left there. A book, of course. Caviar on a crumbly praline cracker, spare tea bags, string. I might tie everyone up in bows if you let me into the symphony. I keep checking the door is really here after all these forevers. I want someone to notice as I walk in, some acknowledgement of this momentous occasion before I'm avalanched in the froth of fantasy, but no one's there. You have to be alone for the door to open.
Oh, that was so good. You have to be alone for the door to open. I love that. Yeah, once again, y'all are amazing. Such a good evening, and it was so good to be in y'all's company. Laura, it was great to see you, and also Josie. That was we had a small Old Dominion University reunion, so this is good. Um, if you have poems that you want to submit to Redheaded Stepchild, please do. We'd love to have them. 3 to 5 poems that have been rejected elsewhere. We were keeping a list of what I call the dumpsters we dove in to retrieve these poems. Gotten less good about that. Once we were on our own list, I kind of thought, well, there you go. It's come full circle. But we would love to see your work that's been rejected elsewhere. It's a delight to be in your good company. Thank y'all. See you next week. And remember, Allison, a couple of weeks from now, we got a lot of people with new books out. Bye, guys.
Bye.